Good morning, everyone. Today is the September 15th, and it's our weekday of the SIG Node meeting, community meeting. So, Ruben, sorry, before, like the usual, we agreed. Sergey, do you want to update our current PR status?
Nothing extraordinary this week. So we trying to keep up with the amount of PRs created. So we, it's a good thing we closed and merged more than we created, and there is like just regular business as usual kind of situation right now.
So I noticed that you also asked some questions related to the test. Actually, originally I want to ask you about the test CI sub-project status. Maybe we can hold that one along with your test, your question later.
Okay.
So, Riven, do you want to talk about the report issue related to the device plugin?
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. Oh, it is disabled. But anyway, it's in dock. So a little bit of background here is that Google has been releasing an hour.
Your voice is a little bit broken, and there's some like the echo around. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Let
me try.
Riven? Oh.
Can't hear you.
I could hear you, David, but I can't hear anybody else.
Yeah, earlier I was even disconnected. I cannot hear anyone else. Yuan? Okay. Maybe we move to next topic until the later when Yuan rejoin and get ready. Xin, do you want to talk about the container notifier?
Yeah, sure. So I just, Shanti and I want to bring this up, that we are working on this feature called container notifier. We have opened a enhancement issue for this. So this is to add an inline port definition for issuing commands to run in a container. And also we will be adding a new API object that can be used for an external controller to send a request for triggering this comments. So we're proposing to do this in several phases. In the first phase, we'll be adding Alpha APIs, and the implementation of the controller logic will be in a single trusted controller that will be handling those container notifiers. And in phase 2, we want to move that logic into kubelet. And also in phase 1, we are only handling comments, but in phase 2, we would also want to handle signals, which means that would require some CRI changes. And then there may be a phase 3 if we want to add probe to check whether those comments are delivered and run successfully. So this is roughly we are trying to do for this feature. So we are working on a cap I have a link to a doc there in the agenda. The cap will be based on this. So we are still working on this. So we'll be submit a cap soon. Xiangqian, you want to add anything?
No, all good. Thanks. We probably will be needing a lot of help from this community to review the code, etc. You probably will be bothered. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I know we've met previously on this topic, and I think there was a last meeting where maybe Seth, you have this in your memory, but do we have an allocated like approver or reviewer in the SIG who wants to try to shepherd this through? And then my other question is, if the code is being explored in a phase 1 outside of the kubelet, where in the Kubernetes GitHub org structure is that code living?
So it's good. So that I still need to figure out exactly where that should be. So it's going to be a controller. So it's going to be part of the kube controller manager, I would think. But I need to look into that implementation details. We'll add that to the cap. So yeah, so who should we add as the approver from SIG Node?
Right now we already have 3. We have Seth, Dom. We also have Derek.
Derek, yeah. So
yeah.
Can we just add you all 3 there, or what's, I don't know usually how this is handled in SIG Node.
I suggest is the reviewer, main reviewer is the Seth. Are you feel comfortable that one? Derek?
Yes, I'm still okay with that.
Yeah, Derek and I can be the approver. But I remember there's a couple open issues we haven't like the scope and because I remember there's a much bigger scope, right? So we tried to narrow down the smaller scope. Hopefully we already because I missed the last meeting we had. Hope we already settled that one.
So Seth was there, right? So yeah, so I think last time we kind of narrowed the scope quite a bit. So for phase 1, this will only be for the comments. So we wouldn't be handling signals, but because signal will require a lot of changes to CRI, I think. Yeah. And also since the controller logic will not be in kubelet, I think that will be, because I think we are going to adding a section for kubelet impact. I think that's requested by Seth. But for phase 1, if it's in another controller, then it won't have any kubelet impact in phase 1 at least.
Okay.
So yeah, Seth, do you want anything, because you were there in the last meeting?
It was actually Derek. Derek added a comment.
Yeah, but the Seth was Derek, but I think Seth was there in the whole meeting.
Yes.
Derek, right? But Derek,
yeah.
I'm not sure if he joined the meeting or joined it late. Yeah, he added some comments there. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So Derek or Seth, you have any other comments before we move forward on this?
No, I guess I wasn't up to speed with implementing phase 1 of this outside the kubelet, but I like that idea. And like you said, phase 1 wouldn't have any kubelet impact initially, and this would give us a chance to kind of flesh out how this actually operates. So I like that.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was after, I think Derek added some comments after the meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the key thing I'm curious about is just to make sure I understand when you do put the cap out there, I understand it'll be behind a feature gate. You'll have to do some code in Kube Controller Manager, but then just clarifying where the node local agent will be in the Kubernetes GitHub like code org structure, if you're going to put that in a new project or in the current KK tree, that would be good.
I think it should be in the current KK. Otherwise, I'm actually not sure how that would work. So yeah, so that's something that definitely need to add to the cap. I don't think I really thought about that yet.
And then if you have, when you go through the cap template, there's sections on testing and production readiness reviews. I think I'd just be curious how we could integrate this in Node E2E testing flows if it's outside of the kubelet.
So initially, yeah, so E2E test, yeah, that's, yeah, if it's alpha, yeah, I'm not sure. So that's something that I still need to figure out, you know, if you know how this should be handled. Should we add E2E test for this controller before moving this to kubelet? Of course, when we move to kubelet, definitely we'll need to add those E2E tests. So that's something, I think it depends on the code structure.
Yes, if I could, I'd ask that we have end-to-end testing as a part of the alpha criteria. And then I guess that's the part I'll be curious to see between Seth, Dawn, and myself, if we can work out a clean plan on. But I wouldn't really want to move testing of this only to happen in the beta phase.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
That's reasonable.
Yeah,
but
we can definitely add, yeah.
Yeah, to answer your question, at this moment, I don't think we have made any decision where to put the controller logic yet. But it's reasonable that we have good coverage on the test so that we feel more comfortable in the future if we want to move to Kubernetes.
So I think I'm missing some context here, but if we're going to start with an alpha feature gate, is there a reason why we wouldn't just start from the kubelet right away? Because with
I think there's some concerns from Derek.
I also share the same concern. Derek and I offline discussed, we share the same concern. So it's not just from Derek, also from me. I think I also reached that concern at the meeting. And I couldn't refresh my memory for that one. It's just the several, because initial the scope is too big. And so we question about why we need the Kubernetes to deal with all those kind of the signal. And also we couldn't have all the use cases to come up to drive off those end to end. So we ask a lot of questions, but a lot of those questions don't have answered. So that's what, because initial proposal, this is for one special storage cases, right? So, but then we try to, I believe that came from the team, which is based on our experience. Basically, I also share the same experience with team on the board. So we do have those kind of problems, but the problem it is we don't think about the kind of proposal and cover all those cases and address all those problems. And also those use cases is today, it is real for Borg. And also we believe it's for some of customer, but not necessarily what we propose is the best answer for those customers address those problems. So that's why both Derek and I raised the concern there. And I believe, so I'm glad we got I forgot the detail, maybe like the Xing and Dianqiang, and you can refresh our memory and see what's the concern and what's the problem it is there.
We are fine, but is this a good place to do that right now? Because we don't want to take too much time from your community as well. We can schedule a follow-up meeting with that. Just to answer the why it is already under an alpha gate and why we still don't do this in the phase one in Kubernetes. There are a couple of reasons, right? One is what Dawn was saying, the concerns around whether this logic should be in Kubernetes. And the other thing is that we don't know how complex the logic is. At this moment, from what I can see, even given this small scope, the logic we're going to add into Kubernetes is going to quite a bit. So adding a lot of logic for a feature like this right now into Kubernetes, that certainly concerns Dawn and Derek. That's one. And the other one is actually it gives us as well more time, smaller scope to implement that in a separate controller rather than in Kubernetes, because otherwise we need to understand the full stack of a Kubernetes to start with. So that's another reason to think about this way. Making this into 3 phases is gonna to cause more turnaround time. We have to admit that, but meanwhile, they also give us more time to validate whether this feature is highly desired by the community by introducing the API only into the core APIs.
Yeah. So Andrew, I think some of my concerns that we raised in our earlier discussions were around like maybe healthy skepticism on the security posture associated with the design, and then some concerns on potential abuse vectors. And so just wanting to experiment on that outside of the kubelet first made, I think, much of the group that was talking about that comfortable on proceeding. But there's this desire to have one agent with very high privileges to do this action rather than delegating another agent of the system with the same privileges, say, as the kubelet. But a lot of unknown unknowns are around this feature when used in use cases outside of the storage use case that was presented here that gave like Dawn and Seth and myself some concern. So I'm really happy to see that we can explore this outside of the core kubelet tree. And to me, it's no different than saying like kubeproxy wasn't in kubelet either, right? We can make evolution and evaluate during each step afterwards.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Just to ask a question, John, Derek, and Seth, anyone else in this community, do you guys feel it is necessary we schedule a follow-up with a smaller group of people to go through the CAP to refresh your memory before Xin and I put this, the CAP out?
I think it's best if you just print the CAP up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we
Fair.
iterate.
Fair. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So let's move to the next topic. Thanks, Xin and Xiangqiang. So let's move to next topic. Riven, have you joined? Can you talk now?
Hey, yeah, let me give it one more shot. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, better.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Finally, yeah. So yeah, this PR I put there is about creating a new repo in the OSS community. A little bit background here is that Google has been releasing our GPU device plugin using the SIG Kubernetes add-ons. So it's part of the open source code. And there was a effort of vanity domain flip. There is a link in the doc. And that vanity domain flip basically deprecated the image paths that our device plugin has been using. So we are going to change it to the community image path. Yeah, so that PR is basically to create a repo so that we can publish our new device plugin image there. And also, I want to bring to our discussion is that whether we should keep publishing Google's device plugin to open source, to community repo, or it'll be better if we publish that to a Google-owned registry. So that is basically what I want to discuss here. Does it make sense?
I personally think this is the Google product interest issue.
Right, because it was using the Kubernetes add-on initially.
Yes.
Right, so that is the part that makes this a little bit confusing.
Yeah, I'm not aware of general community use. I guess I don't have a strong opinion on this versus where I would expect a lot of users would go for a device plugin to be NVIDIA itself. And so as long as it's clear where and how people go to which source, that would be probably good to make it obvious.
Yeah, okay. Because my thinking is that because this is a Google's device plugin, it only runs on, in this case, it only runs on GKE hosts. So it'll be easier for Google for us to make changes if we can just host the image in a Google-owned registry. That is my thinking here.
Yeah, I would be a strong +1 on that.
All right.
I guess what I'm wondering is why do we still
totally
need to
agree.
have ties back?
And
I guess what I'm wondering is why does it need to have ties back into like open source?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know that either. That is way before I joined. But anyway, I think the long term here is that we want to move Google's device plugin off from open source Kubernetes.
I think I agree with you. Bring this one since because initially, kind of like sounds like provide the device plugin from Google to the community, but actually, so far at least we don't think about the code. So you brought this up. It's a good thing. I think both me and Dark don't know why it is offered from the open source. This one I can follow up offline, but I think the community don't think about that's the problem if we move to the Google host of the repository here.
Gotcha, makes sense.
Yeah.
Quick question: has this been have you brought up this with the working group Gates Infra?
Yes, George, I pushed back on it.
Derek, you may remember as well, but I thought that originally the reason for hosting this in open source was that the NVIDIA device plugin required NVIDIA Docker, and we wanted to host a version that didn't require that. I'm not sure if that's still the case today or not.
NVIDIA also evolved. So
right.
NVIDIA also evolved. They didn't really require they do have some like the hook. They still try to work with the community and enable those hook at the CLI level, but they are not require of the special Docker, special containerd. They kind of work around those kind of problems. So, but still, NVIDIA's device plugin, there's the API. If I remember correctly, last time I checked, the API still a little bit different from the open source one. So David, you're right. This is the open source one, but the rule when come up is like this one. It is kind of Google host. So that's why maybe try to differentiate what he is talking about is the different from the default open source one. I just want to share here. Yeah.
Okay.
So we still have the open source default one, but what Ruwen want to separate and have the Google host, then that's the Google host. So right now I'm aware of the SIG Node hat. So I'm talking about the open source things and the Google things, and I want to understand what the Ruwen talk about. But it doesn't mean like the open source don't offer a default one, but production offer, that's the separate story.
Yeah, I guess what I'm wondering is, I don't know if Kevin or Renaud or anyone from NVIDIA is on the call, but most usage of NVIDIA GPUs I've seen these days has users being directed to the NVIDIA GPU operator, which maybe to move forward on this, we can just assign an owner in the community, someone like Kevin or Renaud, to give an NVIDIA perspective on the right way of directing users to best consume, I guess, NVIDIA devices. Personally, I don't see why this needs to hang around in Gates.io at all, I guess, unless there's a tie that we haven't yet uncut, like the accelerator metrics work or something like that?
Right. So from the K8s.io side, the only other thing I can add is like give us a reason, and after that we'll approve it.
Dean, you are talking about this different story. You did talk about actually the host that try to solve this Google production issue and host the different repo. So, but I think the reason also came here is talk about make the current device plugin, and which is the default one, which is the open source offered. It is moved to the Google special repo. And my first reaction is if Google wants to host that one, and please go ahead and host your own copy, your own things. But then the article actually raised another question. It is like is that NVIDIA's one? It is the standard one right now. What it is the API discrepancy, and can we consistent? Can we converging those two together? And as far as I know, do still have some API difference, but very minimized. It's not that huge difference. And they also introduce some node agent, node daemon, and to enable some special cases. So we may need to talk to the NVIDIA folks and see potential of the converging path.
Yeah, sounds good. As long as you are happy and you tell us why, we'll approve it. So no issues there, no worries.
Thanks.
Right. I think that is a long-term thing to basically merging these two different versions of device plugin, the Google ones and the NVIDIA ones. And as for my PR, I think it is okay for us to, for now, not publishing the device plugin images to the community registry. And once we figure out if there is, if we can basically merge the two different versions of device plugin, we can publish that to the community registry. Is my understanding correct?
Okay, so looks like this one, at least from the community SIG Node perspective, I think we are settled down, right? And can we move to next one? Are there any concern? If there are concern, please send an email to the SIG Node community, and we can pick up from there.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So next one, can we talk about who's the proposal? Talk about the comp operation. Sorry, yeah, go ahead, please.
Brilliant. So we created a SecComp operator a few months back, and it's pretty much working. We're developing a few features on that. But then recently we realized that we could extend quite a few of those features for things like AppArmor and even potentially in the future C, Linux, and all. So what we proposing is to rename the SecComp operator to security operator, so we don't need to create 3 different operators to do those features, given that there's a massive overlap. So pretty much just wanted to get this past the SIG Node, because you guys pretty much gave the okay to create the operator in the first place on Kubernetes SIG. So just wanted to see what the community thinks about it.
So this feels like an expansion of the sub-project scope. Is there a write-up that describes the new anticipated scope of this sub-project?
That is a really good point. I don't think we've done something as good as we've done initially for the SecComp. So SecComp, we have like a brain dump of, a brain map of all the ideas and when we would implement them. We haven't really got to the bottom of that for AppArmor and SE Linux, but I'm more than keen to come up with that and present this again.
I guess what I'm wondering is, like, when you add AppArmor and SE Linux, I'm not even sure what the
breadth of the features are that you're talking about evolving around those. And so I kind of feel like before we rename something, we should understand what scope increase might be happening or not.
That's absolutely fine. So I'll do that and come back potentially next week with some more details. So I have another topic as well, which is pretty much.
I just make a comment on the naming before we move on. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, I agree with Derek. I'm also supportive of merging some of those different things together in one package, essentially, to make deployment and management easier. I'm a little worried about the naming of security operator, because that kind of related to the scope thing. That's just a huge scope, and I would like it if we could come up with something that was a bit more descriptive than that. I don't have a suggestion right now, though.
Yeah, that was one of the points that we were actually thinking about as well, because security, I completely agree, is quite broad and all. All right, so we'll come back with those two things, maybe a few names, and also the initial scope that we're planning for this extension.
Could we maybe queue up 10 minutes or so in our next meeting for you to give a readout on the current state of the subproject, like make sure everyone has seen a demo of its latest state, and maybe we can go from there?
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Cool. So for the second topic, well, it's pretty much to get some momentum on the CAP for making the AppArmor GA. So it's pretty much in the same kind of state as SecComp was a few months back, and we pretty much suggesting to do the minimum just to get what we have there rounded up and marked as GA. So yeah, pretty much just wanted to get some people from SIG Node to have a look on the CAP and hopefully to give some feedback so we can move this forward.
Yeah. So Tim, were you the owner on this? Who was picking up AppArmor? This is one of those things I thought we called out in the feature health check.
Sasha was signed up to do that.
Thank you, Murnal.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually asked me to come and talk about it today.
Okay. We still need someone to do the review, I guess. I don't think Sasha could do review. I thought he wanted to help do the implementation. I don't want to put Tim Auclair on the spot, but I'll put Tim Auclair on the spot. Is this something that...
I'm happy to do a review. I feel like I'm a little too close to the project to give sign off, but also happy to do so.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am not, I will admit that I am not the deepest AppArmor expert at Red Hat. I see Linux more. So I'm hoping there's someone who can better represent the AppArmor community in this review.
Yeah, sure. You can put me down as a reviewer for that. I did have a question on this. This has a lot of similarities to the, as you said, to SecComp and the process we went through to getting that to GA. Do you feel like there were any kind of lessons learned or things that you wish you had done differently with the SecComp to GA process that we could apply here?
Well, I think there was in terms of the implementation because, well, I implemented that with Sasha and Dan, and a few things we kind of learned through the process. But in terms of the capping itself, yeah, I wouldn't be able to come up with any learned lessons from the previous SecComp GA.
Okay. Well, I guess we did well then on the first try.
Awesome. So, well, thank you very much for everyone's time today.
Okay. Thanks, Paula, and the team on this one. And let's move to the next one. We have so many topics today. So sidecar container.
Hi, hello.
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know that as we talked in the last SIG Node, I opened a PR last week that addressed all the concerns that were raised previously. It's basically the same, following the suggestions and that were raised in the previous PR or the suggestions in the previous SIG Node meeting. So thank you very much for your help in the previous meeting. I wanted to ask if there's anything else I can do to move this forward, or
Yeah, I will review your cap. I'll just be transparent around my own time pressures this week, that I won't be able to get to it the remainder of this week, given issues in my own personal life. But next week I'll look to get a review. And so apologies for that lag, but I'll take over the review.
No need to apologize. The best of luck with your things. Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, that was all for me.
Let's move to the next topic. So the Windows, please.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Yeah, we are proposing, or we just created an enhancement issue for Windows privileged container support. We have a KEP available. It's currently in a Google Doc form, but we're going to transfer into an MD file and go through the PR process. Since we don't have too much time today to kind of discuss too much in depth, from a high level, we're taking a pretty different implementation method than other Windows containers, in that we're using a job object instead of a server silo. And with that, we get some privileged container capabilities. With that kind of difference and lighting up this feature for Windows, it would be great to get some review of this KEP and have different concerns or cases called out as we kind of move forward with this. And with that, we're looking for SIG Node reviewers if possible. And if there's time kind of in the next meeting for next week to kind of go in depth with any questions that get kind of added in the next week.
Is there anything that calls out in this document, like the distinction between privileged on Windows versus privileged on Linux?
Yes, I think it does go a little bit into this in some of the cases. I'm trying to find a specific location in some comparisons. I think one of the best locations to kind of look at the comparison is the kind of PSP support table that we have. And there is some kind of call out as to PSPs that might be expected for Linux type privileged containers that might have different applications to Windows. And kind of how it influences different use cases like daemon sets and Node plugins.
I will suggest this is as the next review the doc and come back next week or maybe following week to the community for further discussing. How do you think?
Yeah, it would be great to get some time next week to kind of to go over it, to address any comments that need kind of in overcall discussion. Otherwise, you know, we're actively looking at any comments that come into this Google Doc, and once we have an MD file created, we can also address any kind of comments or issues that come on the PR.
Yeah, and just FYI, we have presented this in SIG Windows and got through one round of comments and feedback from the SIG Windows community. So.
I cannot see that next week can have the dedicate of the meeting just for this one, because just you already heard earlier we asked actually see another topic come back. So that's why we can. But do you think about what's the minimum time you require? You think about we needed to review this one?
I think with what happened with SIG Windows, a week was a good time period to give people a chance to view it. And we'll try to be active on any comments or questions that are brought up either in the Slack channel or in this Google Doc, or if we move forward to an MD file.
I guess just in a quick browse of the document, I guess what I'm wondering, is it actually in a state that is ready to implement? It looks like there were pointers out to maybe changes that were needed in the OCI spec itself. Just so I understand when reading this myself, are all the prerequisite requirements before the kubelet satisfied, I guess?
Yeah, so we actually have an internal implementation that's kind of ongoing, and we're working out some internal testing on some of the kinks. But we do actually have a lot of everything that's below, kind of in the container D layer, and any of the Windows bits that have to get addressed are working. And we're just kind of in the past several weeks with feedback from the SIG Windows community have identified the areas kind of above that layer that will need changes, and are kind of addressing how we might get those working. But we're looking for feedback, kind of continuing feedback on the different scenarios as we try to move into the alpha stage.
And there's also a demo video. Looks like there is a link to the video in the risks and mitigation section of this working with Windows and Container D. So the layers below the kubelet.
Yeah, and then my last question is, was there a discussion with SIG Auth on the pod security policy bits?
No, we did not get a discussion with SIG Auth, but we can follow up and see if that's necessary.
Okay, just because SIG Node doesn't actually maintain pod security policy, so I want to make sure that the feedback that you're looking for in the doc it's probably going to be grouped from multiple SIGs.
Yeah, we can take it to SIG Auth. We can post it there as well.
Awesome.
So sorry, I'm curious about what should be the next step from here. So we posted to SIG Auth. The SIG Node community is going to look at the enhancement issue in the doc, the cap. Should we come back next week and take 5-10 minutes to go deeper into any comments?
Yeah, I think for many of us, this is our first time seeing the doc. So at least those of us in the Node community who can review it, we'll see which areas were pertinent to our SIG. But just in advance, I was just wanting to make sure that you understood that some of the sections here were outside the purview of just the SIG. So it sounds like maybe visiting SIG Auth to talk about any pod security policy changes desired or not would be a good parallel action.
Okay.
I would suggest next week you come back just if you feel needed because the feedback. But also you think about, you want proactively looking for SIG Node support, because they obviously have the node related things. If you want to unblock you and make sure risk awareness, and also make sure we are planning to proactively allocate approver and reviewer, so then you come back. But if you think about actually parallel of those, just like the Derek earlier mentioned, that for the SIG Auth support, if you didn't get that one, then you think about, then you don't need Kim here, because obviously you need to address some other issues first, right? So something like that. So it's up to you, but I don't think about next week. We can dedicate one meeting just for this topic. If we lead it okay, SIG Node is the only blocker for this kind of things, then we can talk, and then we can upfront to think about, okay, how we are going to have a meeting dedicated for this review. How do you think?
Yeah, I think we weren't proposing a whole meeting dedicated for this review. It was more like addressing the comment, but it makes sense. So let us go to SIG-auth. If there are no concerns there, then the only thing would be SIG Node, and we'll come back once we're at that position. We can come back and get the approval here. Does that sound like a plan?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to next one, the dims and the dark. So we talk about the Docker sham. Do you want to drive in this one?
Yeah, I can get the ball rolling and Derek can join in. So there's a whole bunch of work that we've already done for this, including the Dockerless tag, including switching around the CI jobs to do more containerd instead of Docker. So that kind of stuff. So basically a whole bunch of things have been already done. Right now, what we are looking at is how do we actually remove Docker shim, and when do we remove Docker shim? So the biggest issue is not the SIG itself, it's the users who have to switch over from Docker to another CRI implementation. So that how do we address that question is basically, what came up when I opened up a PR for deprecating the Docker shim. So ended up writing the KEP. It has 3 stages. One is actually adding the deprecations. The second one would be at some point to stop building kubelet with Docker shim, and then eventually getting rid of Docker shim completely from our tree. So those are the three steps that I could think of. If the main issue right now seems to be, well, there are 2. One is how do we help or guide people who are currently using Docker, say in bare metal scenarios where they have to switch over from Docker to containerd, for example, or CRI-O. Then the other one is how do we make sure that we support the Windows community that currently depends on Docker and they are slowly moving to containerd. So those are the 2 things that came up as concerns, and the timeline itself accommodates both those things. The main thing that we have to do right now is tell people actively that they have to move out and give them time to prepare, however they want to do it, right? There'll be plethora of options of moving in place upgrades, just making sure that new clusters are created using alternate CRI implementations. There's plenty of strategies that people can adopt, but then we have to write them down as well as a migration guide. So that would be another deliverable for the KEP. So at this point in 120, I want to deprecate the user visible things and add deprecation in the logs so people know, and more importantly, adding an action item in the release notes so people have a long period of time to think about this to make it happen. So that was my soapbox. Derek, did you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, so one, thanks, James, for sharing a version of this before the KEP yesterday. I had put some comments on there and I'll have to catch up what you had here. I think to lead into the next topic, I think it's healthy that we identify the reality that Docker shim is kind of in maintenance mode itself, and that as a SIG community, messaging out to the users that our energies are going towards CRI-based implementations for net new features. I think that's very healthy, and so I like the language of maintenance mode. I'm not sure if that language maps to everyone else's view of that. So, but the prereq I wanted to get to complement this behavioral change outward is to kind of sit back and actually ask, what does it take to get the CRI out of the alpha state that we have, and what does it mean to beta or GI, the CRI itself? Like, what is its version skew relative to changes in kubelet and stuff? I didn't feel like that was a document I wanted to put together in isolation. So I guess the call out is, Mernal and I were chatting about this a little bit prior to the call. We'd like to set up a meeting for next week with anybody who's interested in the topic to talk through less on an evolution of what you aspire the CRI to be and more of a requirement to take the present state and identify it for what it actually is the thing that most every vendor is using in production today, and close out those issues that are annoying us in production readiness or in upgrading readiness issues, to just kind of define a unit of work that has completed, I guess. And so I'll send a note out to the SIG Node mailing list to try to get a doodle together with some times for that. And if we can get some folks interested in helping drive this forward, hope to get a KEP out in a couple weeks. But I think it's important we point to that KEP before making a final statement on DIMS's KEP. But thanks, Dim, for being the impetus to make us finally act on this.
Small comment.
Alexander, please go ahead.
A small comment regarding the helping the people to upgrade from Docker Shim to something else. So the current Docker versions, when they start the containerd, it explicitly disable the CRI plugin. If we can help, if we can talk with Docker guys to disable that behavior, so the migration for containerd will become really transparent. And our tools, what we are shipping as Kubernetes, so for example, like kubeadm, can automatically detect that and help with migration.
Yeah, so I want to, if it's okay, Dims, I'm sorry. I don't really want to expand the responsibility of SIG. So in my perspective, we've never truly supported in-place upgrade of a node in Kubernetes. And so it's possible that a user may have to reprovision their node or to change their node configuration. I kind of view that as outside the purview of this SIG. I would applaud SIG cluster lifecycle on what they could pursue in that environment, but I definitely don't want to have to pursue something that says you can change the kubelet and runtime and not drain a node between actions. That just doesn't seem like a realistic goal. And so when we get into the details of these, I guess maybe that's a topic we just write down as a known issue as we write through requirements. But I really don't want to expand the surface area of what we have to support because I think we could go too far on that, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with Derek, but I do have a suggestion for Alex, which is to open up an issue in Moby. So I can go ping other people, you know, outside of this SIG. Thank you.
I think no matter the CRI API issue, actually a little bit not irrelevant, honestly. The most problem people cannot off the Docker, it is some is just because the legacy and they don't want to. Because we never set time, right? So we've been hand wave in the past, and we call out the containerd GA and wave the hand, but we didn't really put effort to make that happen. That need investment. Another one actually is real problem. It is the usability. This is why when I first start the CRI project, I also start a test project and a tool project, because the Docker as the CLI obviously have the really good of the usability. But we invest of the engineering from the SIG Node, and there's the CLI tool. Actually, it is talk about the pod API, container API. Suppose should be by design and should be better than the Docker CLI for the Kubernetes use cases. But obviously implementation is different story, different from the like the design. So we really should like the call out at the community and really set timeline. Timeline could be 1 year. So then people have honestly, ironically, even Google not move off from the Docker. Obviously, that's the engineering investment issue, right? So the resource issue. So if we call out, and then all those production vendors will be put effort to move off the dependency on the Docker. That's basically is the top one issue here. Instant CLI and API. I also for the CLI API I comment because I saw that we are going to run out of time, so I put some high level comment because we have something sort of what it is beta mean, and obviously version school, that's the top issue. We never really solved that problem, and we keep have the new feature added, so that's why we keep end up stuck at the alpha. But again, that's the internal API, so we are not really, it's not really block us to move off from the Docker.
Yeah, so I'll take a look at your comment on. I think generally my thought was CRI can continue to be versioned with kubelet, and that you'd update your CRI when you update the kubelet. But I'll take a look at what you had pointed there. But if folks want to help jump in on this discussion next week, I'll try to find a doodle that can best maximize participants to share their story.
Yeah. And there also have the more issue raised by Sergey about the test and also runtime GA plan and other thing. So unfortunately, we are running out of time. Today we have too many topics. And can we follow up next week on those topics? Or Sergey, you can follow up the email. I also comment on one of your tests there. And because that's basically what you asked the question is the exactly Yuji and I try to address the 2 years ago. So we had the proposal. I think I shared with the community 3 weeks ago, but anyway, I share again here in the comment which you asked. Can we come back your runtime class GA plan next week?
Yeah, next week is fine.
Cool.
Thank you.
And Kevin asked for memory management cap. I guess that's basically ask you, Derek, for review.
Yeah, it'll get on my queue for caps to look at.
I think we ran out of time. Sorry about. And thanks everyone. And looking forward for next week.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.